Well, Darren, welcome. Thanks for joining the podcast, episode 2. For those who don't know, my name's Oliver Carson, developer advocate here at PubNub, and today I'm joined by.
Darryn Campbell, also I call myself a developer relations engineer, but
I
maybe
like
we'll get
that.
into that when we start to talk about sort of my role in the company and what we do. But yeah, also same team as Oliver, so great to be talking with you in a more formal environment, or maybe less formal than what we normally communicate over, Oliver.
Yeah, I mean, we have our informal chats, right? But and also like very much so like informal. We just talk about like our daily stand-ups. But this one is just more of like a more about you than what it is about work and things like that. Of course you could talk about work, but it's both supposed to be about you, about your career, and whatever else you'd like to talk about. So, which probably might be something similar to that on the stand-up. Yeah.
Yeah, well, don't tempt me. If you say I can talk about anything now, I'll probably go completely off tangent, and it will be completely separate to the title that you give this podcast. But yeah, go ahead. What did you have in mind to chat
Yeah,
about?
yeah. Maybe first, maybe we'll get to know a little bit more about yourself. Maybe tell us a little bit about what you used to do before you joined PubNub. Maybe kind of your background, uh, and then kind of what you used to do, and then kind of when you joined PubNub, how you kind of brought all those things together for your DevRel role.
Yeah, sure. So I used to be a software engineer. I've been a software engineer for years, actually, for C++, Java, JavaScript, Ada at one point as well. So I'm very much an engineering background, but I found the more work I did in my previous company, the more I enjoyed working specifically with developers. And I ended up creating like little demo applications, samples for them. I was the one that was engaging on the community, writing blog posts. I'd have an annual blog about all the changes that had happened in Android, and that was my regular thing. Every year I would do a presentation on this. It's kind of scheduled in the calendar a few months in advance. But yeah, I realized I enjoyed DevRel, I enjoyed working with developers, so moved over to PubNub because that, as a software company, that let me focus specifically on this developer relations role as opposed to engineer/developer relations. And I can still do software engineering. I still create a lot of applications. Feel free to visit our website, pubnub.com/demos, and you'll see a lot of what I've created on there. But it's I'm passionate about both creation and working directly with developers. This lets me do both of those things in the same role.
Oh, that's really cool. So it was kind of like you were doing sort of like DevRel before it became like a formal position, I guess I would say, not only at your company, but even kind of like worldwide. It feels like DevRel wasn't really well adopted until the last like decade, maybe even. And maybe I'm being a little generous, or
No,
too strict.
you're right. Yeah, I was doing what would now be called developer relations. Yeah, even before there was these specific developer relations roles, and for the longest time, it was only the largest companies that would have dedicated developer relations. I remember there was always a Microsoft podcast. I don't know if it was even a podcast at the time, but like they would do various events where they would have an IoT event and they'd have various blogs about IoT. That was back like 10 years ago when everyone was creating these IoT mirrors. And
Yeah.
that was quite inspiring at the time. But I didn't realize that there was people with this dedicated role. And then over more recent years, it's the smaller companies like such as PubNub that have developed a specific core of developer relations engineers. But what that means really depends like from company to company. Like we were at a conference last year and we were talking a developer relations DevRel, wasn't it, talking with different companies what their developer relations team do, and some were just doing the social media, the
Hmm.
videos for socials. Some were just creating demo applications, and that was all they were doing. Some were doing what I would term developer marketing rather than developer relations. And so that's why I was very specific when I was trying to introduce myself. I'm a developer relations engineer. I like creating stuff, getting down with the code. Is that an expression? If not, I've just made it up. But we're actually doing the technical work, and that's how I see developer relations. But every people see developer relations differently, even within the same company.
Oh, 100%, right. It's been one of those interesting things where um those in the industry know when you say DevRel, of course, the sub kind of role of developer relations, but even trying to explain it to people outside of the industry, it's kind of a difficult task to explain what you do in some ways because we do a lot. Like you said, we do more than just develop code. Some of us do more so than others. Like I think even between the two of us, I do more of like the marketing side, kind of the DevRel marketing side of things just because I've been doing more socials recently. But that's just because there's been like a need for it. So my role's kind of evolved in that way, I would say. But I mean, have you been enjoying more of the engineering side of things compared to the short form video, creation side of things, marketing side of things? I would assume so based on your past history too.
Yeah, so I mean, I just addressed the first part of that, like explaining developer relations to other people. I struggle with it,
Mhm.
especially if they're not technical people. I'm sure you've been going into another country and you're talking with the border agent. You get that question, "What do you do?" Like, I am not going to tell them that I'm a developer relations
Yeah.
engineer or DevRel, or I'm just a software engineer. I work in the communications industry, and that's all I'm going to explain. But yeah, if it's someone technical, they probably understand what developer relations is. Or you can say, if you write sample code, if you like consume sample code, then I'm probably creating that sample code. If you're reading blogs, technical blogs, that's something that DevRel are doing. And then I forgot the rest of the rest of that. Oh, what do I enjoy? You were asking me what I enjoyed,
It was a long
whether I enjoyed
question.
more the socials.
You're good.
Some people can really keep track of these questions, and they'll say, right, I'll address the first one and the second one. Yeah, so I've tried to do everything.
Yeah.
I had a go with the short form video and the socials. I've tried long form video. I've tried like maybe more fun blogs, like less technical blogs, but more developer marketing. I don't really get on with those. Like, I enjoy creating the videos, don't get me wrong, but it takes a specific type of person to make an entertaining video that's kind of consumable in short form, or even just like a 10-minute YouTube video. Compared to what I enjoy is going deep into a topic on maybe a webinar. Like, if we release a new feature, like, I'm not just saying we PubNub, like anyone. Like, I mean, if some other company wanted to, no, sorry, if let me phrase that differently. Actually, um, like, if I'm talking at a conference, then you normally get given like a 40-minute slot to talk about a specific topic. So I would pitch a specific technical topic to talk about. Maybe it's a new feature of my company, maybe it's a feature of some other product that I'm particularly interested in. But often, like, it's all very well and good understanding that this feature can do something. But what I like to do is to try and explain the feature for the developer audience, so that they would understand like how they can use that feature and what that feature means to them in their particular industry, rather than just an abstract, here is the API, have at it with this. Read the documentation. It's all very low level. Developers nowadays might go to ChatGPT and say, well, summarize this API, and they'll get a summary of the API written by ChatGPT. But what does that really mean for them in their industry? It's very difficult to consume at that point. So yeah, I'm not even sure I did. It was my second attempt to answer your question. I'm not sure I answered it very well, but
No,
yeah,
no, no.
please.
That's great because I mean I was even like talking about some questions. I have like a list of questions I wanted to or topics I wanted to discuss with you, and you already hit a couple of them. I'm like, okay, so I gotta mark that one off so I don't ask it again. No, that's great. Yeah, fantastic. Um, okay. I'm a little skipped now. No, it's all good.
So
Um,
my answer was too long for you. That's your fault for asking too long questions.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so I mean, kind of speaking back to that point of, where you're trying to create more developer focused content rather than just trying to be very high level. Um, in terms of, in a way, we still need to kind of market our product, right? We still have to be able to talk about PubNub. We still have to, make sure people understand what's going on. So how do you just pick what different types of content to focus for developers? Is there some content that is differentiated between like product managers, for example, or developers? Or is it mostly about developers, maybe about like 70% of the tone, but then the language is maybe a little more higher level for other people to understand? How do you approach that if you were to like maybe work on a demo and then the side pieces around it?
Well, I mean, again, to go back to the beginning of your question, I think the product should sell itself. Like, it's not my job to specifically sell the product. Like, we have sales teams for
Yeah.
that. And if the product isn't going to sell itself, then it's probably not a good product, and I don't want to be talking about it full stop, because I would feel disingenuous then telling other people about, hey, look at this great product that's not really that great. Yeah, so when I'm putting like content together, I'm thinking about how can I allow the product to best show itself in its best light. We're like, what is the product designed to do? How can I show it doing that in a fun and engaging way for the audience? whether it's a blog that I'm writing about and I'm sort of showing the key pieces of code that someone would need to copy and paste into their own, like, I don't know, browser or Node.js backend to get this working themselves. Or if it's a demo, like even if I'm not the best at making the demo look good, I can try and make it engaging. Like I'm going to have a clear button that someone can click to actually, interact with the demo, have it feel real for them, have it do something. And they leave the demo, even if they don't understand specifically how it works, they have an idea of what the product can do, how that might affect them or influence their design decisions. And then if they want to learn more, if they want to understand the code, then they know where to go. Like when they can just clone the demo. I deliberately do all of my demos under MIT, so someone can just copy and paste any of the code, or ChatGPT can steal the code and insert it into its own database for its own use. That's absolutely fine. If I'm doing a demo, then that's what it's for. But yeah, that's my goal, to help the product sell itself to developers, essentially.
Nice. No, that's awesome. That's a fantastic answer. Yeah, I mean, that's something I will struggle with sometimes, especially if I'm being asked to do like a piece for a product where maybe I'm not sure if it's fully focused on developers, or maybe I'm like, yeah, I can kind of see it, but at the same time, it might be more towards like live ops, for example, or like product managers. But yeah, no, that's a fantastic answer. Yeah. Yeah. So
Maybe you're starting a new like employment opportunity of the live ops engineer rather than a developer relations engineer. That's the DevOps. And there are whole DevOps conferences that people go and
yeah,
talk
yeah,
to fellow DevOps people. And frankly, if you find yourself as a DevRel talking about DevOps, then like you're doing two roles at that point. So you focus on who the specific audience are, I would say.
that's true. Yeah. I mean, we do have a hand in very like a multiple roles and multiple teams. I feel like we are being pulled in kind of everywhere a little bit, whether that's through like marketing, design, engineering, which is a good thing, right? Because we're kind of like that bridgeway between developers and the company, so to speak. So cool.
Well, we're the bridge with developers and engineering.
Yes.
I don't know if we're the bridge with marketing. Maybe we're the bridge with marketing to make sure that marketing aren't saying anything that's completely untrue. I think that when
Yeah.
developers see marketing out there, there's an expectation that marketing is going to put the marketing spin on a particular feature. But like you always need to be on the lookout as a developer that there's nothing like quantifiable that's being said that's untrue. At that point, you need to step in and say, hey, marketing, you've gone over the line, you're deceiving developers at this point. Like just keep everything within on the side of truth, as they say.
That's true. Or even like just the messaging in general, not even just like kind of the facts and things like that. Which it makes sense since we were also once developers too. So we're like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense to a developer. While this term may be like, I see what you mean, but that's not quite like developer focused. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well,
Fantastic.
marketing's job, like the audience of marketing, is like not just developers. They're aiming at technical, CTOs,
Hmm.
high level, not like buyer. Maybe the person in charge of buying the product or researching the product. Maybe they're an architect. Maybe they're not even technical. They're just someone with a credit card that's looking around and trying to help make their team more efficient. And they come across this great marketing spiel about whichever company they're talking about. But if you're talking about developer marketing, I see as separate from developer relations. So that would be creating some content that would appeal to a developer, that make a developer want to buy something. Whereas the developer relations is to make the developer want to use something. And like, to use our example of PubNub, like we as DevRel want to make developers use PubNub because dot down the line, they will then become customers as their usage increases, and then like we start to monetize. Whereas we're not specifically marketing to those developers beyond maybe some key SEO terms. We're just trying to help the product sell itself.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, because I mean, I think for me, sometimes I think of as DevRel as a little bit of everything, where we have to, the jack and jill of all trades, I guess is the best answer I always give to people. But I like how you're kind of like, no, it's more specific based on what we're trying to do. So some roles have different, very specific job functionality. And like you said, like you like to be more of a developer relations engineer, while I feel like I'm more developer marketing focused. So yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Just keep adding words to the job title, and
Yes.
the more words, the more impressive it sounds.
SEO, right? I'm speaking with Tomasz next week, our SEO manager. So I'm getting my mind ready for that. So cool. I guess kind of next, I wanted to talk about in terms of maybe something you've done recently that you feel like really worked well with developers? And then I want to ask a follow-up question to that, the opposite. But we'll start with this first. So maybe if you have like an example you can kind of think of, because sometimes I struggle with maybe I might miss like kind of like the developer audience I was aiming for. Sometimes I hit it, sometimes I miss it. So kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I don't really. In the past, when you asked me that question,
Hmm.
and when I've gone to job interviews in the past, I would normally say like I have produced. My go-to answer was always like I've created this piece of open source software. It's gained some traction
Yeah.
in the community. I've seen stars on the project. I've seen it be used. I've had pull requests been raised against that. And as a developer relations engineer, that makes me feel good because I've put code out there and it's being used in other projects and it's open source and I've done the best and I've helped sell my company's software. Uh, More lately, I would maybe lean towards an AI answer to that question. So
Oh.
I'll give you a very specific example. Like I've created a number of demos, obviously, with PubNub, and we advertise the fact that all of our documentation, and our CEO will tell you this if he gets on a call with you. All of our documentation has been on the website for a long time. It's been analyzed by ChatGPT, by Claude, by all the AI agents.
Yeah.
So if you're creating an application, then you can like ask ChatGPT, how can I create a PubNub application? And it will give you some working, realistic code to create that PubNub app. And like that's fine. That's okay, so what does that mean in terms of answering your question? The I was recently working on a project with my colleagues on more on the engineering side, the sort of the website engineering side, but they were tasked with helping me develop a React application. So I said to them, okay, can you create the chat component of this React application? And they said, oh, okay, fair enough. We will use this as an opportunity, a learning opportunity to try and create an AI like application using PubNub, and we're going to create all of our like chat widget with AI. And like that worked. Like, okay, go away, do your work. They came back, and I was looking at the code they produced. I thought this code looks familiar. It's not from our documentation, but it was from the demo code of the samples that I'd written a couple of months ago. So obviously that demo code, and I could tell this, it's not exactly the same, but I can tell my own style of coding. It's not the same as what ChatGPT would use, but you can tell things like some things are a little bit questionable because it's just what I do as part of my like process of coding. But that was fascinating to see that like my demos have been taken by ChatGPT, my PubNub demos, and they're now influencing like our engineering team to create demos themselves. So how many engineers are there who are getting the benefit from my demo who have never actually used the demo themselves? They're just like seeing the code appear in front of them. They don't even know that I wrote it. Maybe there's something to say with job satisfaction there, but yeah, at least I know it's happening, and I'm influencing these developers for the positive. But yeah, that was quite interesting when I saw them producing that code.
No, that's really cool. So is it like so you recognize is it like it doesn't insert like comments and things like that, right? That were pretty much like word for word or almost word for word based on your like original demo, or is it just more of the coding style, like you mentioned?
It, it's the coding style,
Okay.
like
So it's not like a copy and paste. Okay.
no, like I can tell because like obviously when you're creating an application with any API in React,
Mhm.
there's ways you can use different use effects, use memo, types of state that you would save in the application. And obviously, yeah, it's a chat application. So you're gonna have some common decisions of how you would like do X, Y, and Z. But even like it uses separate use effects for the things that I've used separate use effects for. And this I created this demo before AI development was really a thing. Certainly, I wasn't using AI for development at the time. It either it's incredibly coincidental that it just happened to choose the same use effects on the same variables with the same state with very similar names, or it was taking strong influence from my demo. And I tend to lean towards the latter. It just seems too coincidental that I would have been so perfect to have designed such a perfect application that AI would completely agree with me that that's the right way to have done it.
Well, I think you're perfect, Darren, so you don't have to worry about that.
Well, you're wrong, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I'm the host. I get to say what is right. You know, well, okay. So kind of, I also want to get into AI in a little bit because I think it is definitely the hot topic, but even more so, I think for to our industry in terms of in our role of like content that we create. Since we do dabble a little bit of everywhere. But how about maybe something since you've been doing this for a while, something that didn't work?
Would say what I used to do very wrong in the past is I would like produce samples and demo code, and like I would not in my README, I would not put at any point warning. This is sample code, no
Mm.
guarantee or warranty against this source code. And at the time, I was actually creating it on my personal account as well, my personal GitHub account, rather than any GitHub account associated with the company. But even then, like people would see that, and maybe it was linked to from the official company website, and like they would contact the company support rather than raise a issue on my repository. They would contact support and say, you have this repository out there, it's not working for me under these specific circumstances, fix it. Or does this fall under my support agreement? And like, I'm not in the engineering team, I was on the architecture team at the time. Like, I'm having to find extra time myself to try and fix these issues, and then like there would be back and forth with the support team and the individual developers saying, well, it doesn't say that this isn't supported code. So from that point on, for anything that is not supported by myself or yourself, Oliver, then I make sure I put in big like shouty text on the README. This is no guarantee or warranty associated with this source code at all. Beyond like the normal warning that you have to put around, there is no error handling in the source code that we all have to put on our demos. I'm very cognizant of that in anything I create
Oh, yeah,
nowadays.
that makes sense. I mean, usually I'll say, this is like a demo code of XYZ, or like, check the official docs in case something, like this gets outdated via an SDK. We try to, keep up to date with our repositories. But yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't considered that before. So yeah, I can see why you do that.
It's less of an issue now. I'm specifically a DevRel person because
Mm,
this is my full-time job. I think there is an expectation that what we put out there as a team should be supported moving forward, unless it like involves a deprecated feature that is no longer supported by the engineering team, obviously. So yeah, not as much anymore, but it may be a word of warning. Even if I was creating an application with PubNub on my free time that I don't want to have to support like in my free time again, then I'd make sure I have that warning, big loud shouty text in the README.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of those things where you don't want to get in trouble or like deal with it, like you said, in your free time, or especially if you're trying to do like make a demo for, I don't know, a customer, or for like a various industry. You're like, no, I don't want to have to deal with that extra work when it could have been avoided by putting those texts. Okay, no, that's great. Actually, that's probably something I need to start doing as well. So good advice, Darren. Thank you. Cool. So kind of, I guess, going back again is the right word. AI. So what are your thoughts about it in terms of our industry? And, maybe for those who are trying to get into DevRel, how do you leverage AI in terms of your own content?
It's difficult to say something new that no one else has said before. Yeah, AI, very useful.
Yep.
It's going to put all of our jobs out of business. I always be mindful that, and I would say this if you're working with documentation as well, we as DevRel are the people who are feeding the AI monster, who are sort of absorbing all of this and spitting out at the back end the source code that works. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, developers are going to use AI. Like, we use AI when we create our demos, and it makes us a lot faster and more efficient. Like, developers are um, not being efficient if they're not using AI for their development. So you have to accept that. People are not going to be using your documentation, your demo, your samples directly as much anymore. It's just one of those things. Unfortunately, it does lead to less job satisfaction, I think, or less satisfaction, because I used to enjoy people reaching out to me. Well, not everyone who'd reach out to me, but you get like people reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter, as it was at the time, and say, hey, I'm using your application for XYZ. Like that. Can you answer a few questions for me? Or even at one point, I had someone participate in a sample that I had already written, so I was able to reach out to him on Twitter, and I got him sent some swag, and it's a good way to encourage developer relationships with external developers. But you get that less if like developers are just using your content through ChatGPT and you've got no knowledge of it. Like, although earlier on I said it was cool that was happening, I see that as happening more and more way forward. And like maybe that gets into another existential issue. Like, a lot of companies will question the need for DevRel.
Mm,
Why do we need to have a developer relations team? What are they bringing? Like, what money are they bringing in to the organization? And the frequent answer that we always have to give is, don't look at it in terms of dollars and cents. Look at it long term. We're raising awareness. We're making the product easier to consume, which leads to more sales down the line. Like, and okay, that is an argument that people kind of accept. So it depends who you're talking to. Obviously, PubNub accept that. That's why we have a DevRel team. But like, it becomes more and more hard in the future if your argument is then we are producing the content that feeds into ChatGPT that like developers are using, and they don't even realize that they're using DevRel. I can see that as being a struggle in a couple of years' time. I don't hear that being spoken about as much. It's all the positives about AI helping with code generation, or the negatives of AI hallucinating and getting various things wrong. Yeah, we've all had that. I was having a conversation with AI earlier on, trying to get it to make some of my specific text characters blue in a message input box, and it was reversing the characters. It was adding at symbols all over. It was it was quite funny actually. I wish I was recording my screen as I was doing it, but it's we've all been there with those kind of AI hallucinations. But where is the talk about the future of DevRel and AI? I don't see that happening enough. Apart from this podcast, we're going to start it right here, me and you, Oliver.
Yeah, there we go. No, I mean, I completely agree. It's one of those things where I try to treat it like a calculator, where it's a tool for me to use. It can't function fully without me. It's not, I don't think it's good enough, and I don't think it might get good enough eventually to the point where it's almost like acting like a role, but definitely for now and in the near future, I think it's just a calculator. We have to, enter in the buttons. We have to make sure that the math is right. It just does a lot of like some of the heavy lifting and things that would just take time normally, which is what I love to use it for. But yeah, absolutely. Where you're right. We don't really talk a lot about in terms of uh, the DevRel side of things, where we're feeding the model with content that we create. And how does that loop work? Where you've seen it before in terms of like the React project that you talked about earlier. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I saw this before. This is something I did. So yeah, it's an interesting question and interesting
And
answer.
how do we influence that if it's wrong?
Yeah.
Like if my demo is wrong, I can go in and fix that. But like, how does ChatGPT know that it's wrong? And Claude and all of the other, the new agents that come along in the future. And obviously, eventually, your demo updates will be absorbed and taken in. But what then about the other applications that have been written or forked from your demo that ChatGPT doesn't know? Oh, that's not the official one. That's just someone else's fork that happens to be more popular. So maybe I should trust that demo in preference to Darryn's demo, because like they've used like Darryn's demo as the basis, but then they've added a much more flashier and fancier UI, which means it has more stars. So let's trust that one more. But it's still wrong. In how do we correct it? I don't know. I don't know what the solution is to that.
Yeah, and it also too, like like maybe PubNub best practices. It's not best implemented maybe after they forked it. Maybe it's like, oh, okay, they did something that's like, yeah, it's correct, but it's not the best way. But then the AI is like, well, like you said, it has more stars, so let's just use that as like the baseline. So yeah, I
Yeah.
know like feedback helps quite a bit, but like you said, there's a lot of data coming in and out. So
Yeah.
absolutely. Cool.
But it's the people who are like, it's not me that's providing the data to ChatGPT. It's everyone else who's using the app, and as far as they know,
Hmm.
it's correct. Yeah.
You kind of just have to like just trust it in a way. Well, trust it with a grain of salt, I guess that's what I should say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, that was great. I mean, I guess we're kind of coming up and wrapping up in time. A question I always like to ask is maybe one key takeaway that maybe you'd like to share from this discussion, or a piece of advice that maybe we didn't talk about for your fellow DevRel members or people who are trying to get into developer relations. What's one key takeaway you'd like to give?
Yeah. I mean, we started off this podcast by saying that there's lots of different angles of
Mhm.
developer relations. There is no one developer relations. My takeaway, personally, I like to have a strong engineering background in
Yeah.
developer relations, because I don't think you can talk to developers unless you have been a developer yourself. That exists like in all sorts of areas of life. Like you shouldn't really talk about something if it's not something you're familiar with. So if you're thinking about getting into DevRel, start off in engineering first, and then I don't. But they say those that can't teach. Maybe that's not the analogy to go for. But yeah, if you find you enjoy engineering and you enjoy educating other developers, then it's a good opportunity to move into a developer relations role.
Absolutely. I mean, that's kind of why I moved into DevRel, because I developer engineering background as well, and I just kind of got tired of just staring at code all day. And I'm like, I enjoy teaching people, so I kind of went down the rabbit hole of DevRel, and yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So fantastic, cool. Well, Darryn, I guess we'll kind of wrap up. Maybe where can listeners kind of if they want to connect with you, check out the code you've done, the work you've made, what's the best place to do it?
Yeah, Google. I've got a very
Google.
unusual spelling of my name, so just I don't know. It sounds horrible, doesn't it? Google my name, and you'll come up with my GitHub repository,
Okay.
the PubNub GitHub. So I tend to put all of my source code in the. We've got a PubNub developers repository. So
It's
yeah, you
okay.
put that link.
It
But
there's a link. There's a link at the bottom. Don't worry.
um, yeah, or I have my own website as well. I put all of the stuff I create, content I create on my own website. That's more if anything goes wrong with the official PubNub blog. I've had this in the past as well. I've produced content for previous employers and their blogs have gone down and I've lost that resource. And I find my resources useful because I know that they exist. So I like to refer back to them every now and then. And I can only do that if I like host them myself and know where they are. So yeah, my website as well as the other alternative.
Another great key piece of advice right there. Back up your content. Okay, there we go. Well,
100%.
Darryn, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'll make sure I also have the link to your website on the screen as well. So, yeah, appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Oliver. Thanks for your time. And thanks for listening.
Of course, thank you.